Welcome into Cougar Tracks here on the KSL Sports YouTube and KSL News Radio, your legacy home of the Cougars. I am your BYU insider, Mitch Harper. It's Thanksgiving Eve, Wednesday, November 26th, as BYU football continues preparations to take on the UCF Knights. And you'll hear from defending Big 12 Offensive Player of the Week, LJ Martin, in this edition of the show. But we got to start things off with the college football playoff and how BYU continues to get left out of the bracket.
The top story of the day. The biggest story in the world of BYU sports right here on Cougar Tracks.
No surprise, BYU stands pat at number 11 in the college football playoff rankings. Wasn't a shocker. It's disappointing, yes, because 10-1 Power 4 team in the Big 12 Conference should be a shoo-in to the college football playoff, but clearly this committee continues to remain unimpressed with 10-1 BYU. Here's the full rankings for how the committee put together this fourth installment of the college football playoff rankings. Number 1 remains Ohio State, 2 Indiana, 3 Texas A&M, 4 Georgia. Those are the teams that are going to have first-round byes if the playoffs started today. The highest ranked team outside the first-round byes is Big 12 favorite Texas Tech, number 5, BYU's lone loss this season. And honestly, I would say the number 5 spot is a great position because you likely play the group of 5 favorite. You get a home game. You get a little bit of momentum under your sails going into the quarterfinals against a team that has a long gap between games. So not the worst thing for Texas Tech if they end up at number 5. Number 6, Oregon, they make a jump after they take down USC this past weekend. Number 7, Ole Miss, 8, Oklahoma, 9, Notre Dame, 10, Alabama, 11, BYU, 12, no longer Utah, it's the Miami Hurricanes, and then 13, Utah, 14, Vanderbilt, 15, Michigan. The ACC favorite would be Virginia at number 18 because Miami, they have really no path to getting to the ACC championship game. And then the group of 5 favorite would be Jake Retzloff and the Tulane Green Wave, ranked at number 24 in the rankings. So again, no shocker that the fact that BYU is sitting at number 11. I just think it's pretty discouraging, though, that BYU is getting hammered so badly for a road loss to the number 5 team in the country. You look at all the quality wins that BYU has this season. They now have a second win over a top 25 team as Arizona joined the group of the top 25 playoff rankings this week. That was a big win, and the Arizona Wildcats are 8-3, playing some of their best football this season. I think what I come away from this is that the Big 12 needs to campaign immediately after Saturday's games. I think they're still kind of taking a little bit of a cautious approach because they want everything to play out in the regular season, and then they start banging the drum to campaign. Because even at the Players Era Festival, Brett Yormark was there in Las Vegas. He was on the TNT set, and Adam Lefkoe, the host, kind of teed up Brett Yormark to talk about BYU, and he didn't. And it's just the Big 12 hasn't done enough to send the messaging that BYU absolutely belongs over Alabama, belongs over Notre Dame. Notre Dame lost their 2 biggest games of the season this year. They lost their 2 toughest games, and they're going to sit comfortably on conference championship weekend, not have to worry about a 13th data point. Meanwhile, BYU has to go play that 13th data point, assuming they beat UCF this weekend, and play one of the toughest teams in America, maybe the best or the second best team in America. I think Texas Tech is that good. They've got to go win that game in order to get in. And then they're going to be framed as 12-1 Big 12 champion BYU is a bid thief. Say what? A power conference champion with only 1 loss is potentially a quote-unquote bid thief? That's the problem. When Cougar fans are saying, just win, don't worry about it. No. The problem is that there's no margin for error. This is the same song and dance that BYU lived in the Mountain West Conference and in Independence. Still a path, sure, great. They know their route to get to the playoff. But the fact that you have to go beat Texas Tech in Arlington, and look, I think BYU will be more competitive that time around if they get that matchup in Arlington. I'd like to think they would be far more competitive. But still, the fact that they have to win that game to get into the playoff is pretty crazy to me. Now, they need chaos in front of them to happen. Maybe an Auburn can knock off Alabama. Maybe the world could be stunned and Stanford beats Notre Dame. Maybe. That would also help BYU's metrics too. But I just think it's frustrating that BYU, there's no respect. Even listening to the teleconference this week with Hunter Yurachek, the College Football Playoff Committee chairman, who basically killed the 6-7 meme. 6-7. He killed that thing when he said that on the College Football Playoff ranking show with Reese Davis. And then he calls Reese Davis rich. But no one asked about BYU in the teleconference. I wasn't able to get on that teleconference this week. I was hosting First and 12, my weekly Big 12 show with Alex Keary on KSL News Radio. So it's just like people are saying, yeah, absolutely. What Yurachek said last week, BYU performed poorly against Texas Tech on the road. They got hammered. They got outperformed, as Yurachek says. Yeah, that's right. They don't take into account the new data that was presented where BYU gets a double-digit victory over a 7-win Cincinnati team that just a few weeks ago was ranked in the College Football Playoff Top 25. They don't acknowledge these things, these new data points, the new enhanced resume where BYU has another top 25 win. No, they just stand pat at number 11. Meanwhile, Miami jumps Utah to number 12, and no Cougar fan's going to be crying about that. They want Utah to get jumped, but at the same time, it helps BYU a little bit. Again, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. No Cougar fan is pulling for Utah to have access to the playoff as an at-large bid, especially in a year where BYU beat the Utes. But it's still pretty telling to me how Utah, puts up 50-plus points, gets a win over K-State, who's not great this year. They're now 5-6, fighting for their postseason lives after that shocking loss to Utah where they had the game in the bag. But you have to be flawless in the eyes of the committee if you're not a chosen brand. You have to be perfect. You have to be excellent every single week in the Big 12. Whereas Miami, a team who's probably the 5th best team in the ACC, a league that's weaker than the Big 12 this year, yet they continue to climb because of a game in week 1. It's pretty crazy to me how this sort of thing happens in the college football playoff conversation. And the thing is, too, is I love the discourse on ESPN around Oregon. Booger McFarland, who I enjoy. I like his commentary. He's a straight shooter. I know he keeps things pretty simple. But one game against USC, one signature win, and then it's the commentary from guys like Booger. Seen enough. Enough said. Oregon belongs number 6. Great. Why is BYU not 6? Why is BYU not there at 7? Why aren't they in the conversation to be in that same area of teams, even 8 above the 2 lost teams? I asked Yurachek last week about that, and he laid out all these games against ranked teams. But, again, the Big 12 teams don't get the benefit of the doubt. You just instantly get bumped into the rankings because it's a self-fulfilling deal where they beat ranked teams and ranked teams each and every week because of preseason narratives. Kansas State had a preseason narrative where they were viewed as a top 15 team. They looked like that against Utah. At least their physicality on the ground didn't matter. They've already been deemed as a subpar team, and Utah then drops a spot. That's the frustrating thing about being in the Big 12, where you thought being in this conference would eliminate those headaches for BYU. It hasn't. The headaches have only grown greater, it seems like, being in this setup. And now with the 12-team format, when it was first rolled out in 2021, before the Texas and Oklahoma movement to the SEC, this format felt perfect in many respects. But now it doesn't, because there's uneven schedules within these conferences. It needs to be shaken up again, and the extension to change up the format has been extended to January 23rd, 2026. Shocking that they needed an extension to figure out a format. They've had all this time. We've been talking about it incessantly as media members at the spring meetings. That was the only thing that media wanted to talk about, was the playoff format. And then still they need more time to to figure it out. Hopefully we get to the 24-team format. I know that a lot of people say that would be terrible for college football. What's terrible for college football is putting the championships and the future and who the best teams are in college football in the hands of the committee, a committee that basically makes a joke of these situations, dropping memes and 6-7 references in a situation that determines a lot about job security. You think about bonuses for coaches, the excitement from boosters, the donations that come from getting to the playoffs and having a chance to play for the national championship. And that guy's dropping a 6-7 reference. Yeah, get the playoff out of their hands. Let's see more automatic bids, but just make it more equal bids for all the conferences. And I'm okay, too, with the group of 5 having that 12th spot. I think it's important for college football. If you're a college football fan, you want the group of 5 and soon to be the group of 6 next year with the Pac-12 joining the ranks as a full league once again. You want college football to have coast-to-coast meaningful football every single week. And so I'm okay with Jake Retzloff and the Tulane Green Wave getting that 12th bid. And if that leaves BYU out, so be it. It's just unfortunate the selection committee can't acknowledge BYU's metrics. When you look at some of the pieces of BYU, number 6 in strength of record, a huge data point that the committee often references over the years. Look, I've been following this playoff for a long time. Since 2014, I love college football. They always talk about strength of record, and you've got a team that has the 6th best strength of record, and they're outside the playoff. Number 27 strength of schedule, according to ESPN strength of schedule metrics. That's 7 spots higher than Notre Dame. That's 25 spots higher than Ohio State, who just is given the number 1 ranking without question. And I know that they're undefeated. I'm not saying Ohio State doesn't belong. Julian's saying excellent quarterback, and Ohio State looks good. But again, 52nd best strength of schedule. Can you imagine an undefeated BYU team with the 52nd ranked strength of schedule? They would not be number 1, I'll tell you that much. BYU has a 6 spots higher than Ole Miss strength of schedule as well. 21 spots higher than Miami, who's inching closer and closer to BYU at the number 12 spot. BYU's 14th in game control, another metric that the committee tends to love. And then they've got top 25 offense, defense, and special teams in the S&P Plus ratings. BYU is an excellent football team. They absolutely belong in the college football playoff. And the fact that it becomes, well, just win your conference and you're in. No, they should be in. If they beat UCF, they should automatically be in. But now they need help in front of them to get that done. And probably they need to win the Big 12 in order to do that. And that's a shame because the Big 12 is a much better league than they're getting credit for. Notice we didn't see any comment from Brett Yormark this week because, again, you've only got one team in the bracket. The Big 12 needs to start pushing the marketing for BYU and Texas Tech to both be comfortably in the playoff after this week's games, assuming Tech and BYU win their football games this week. Let's take a break. We'll get to more BYU football talk with LJ Martin coming up around the corner, and then we'll also have more here on Cougar Tracks. It's powered by KSL Sports. Welcome back into Cougar Tracks here on the KSL Sports YouTube page every day. Giving you the latest BYU sports talk here on the KSL Sports YouTube and KSL News Radio, your legacy home of the Cougars. Different backdrop for me this week. This entire week I've been in Florida getting ready for BYU basketball in the Terry's Chocolate ESPN Events Invitational. That's a mouthful. It'll be at the ESPN Wide World of Sports in Kissimmee, Florida. We'll have you covered for BYU versus Miami in the magic bracket of the event. So it's going to be a lot of fun here in Florida. Very curious to see this BYU basketball team in person once again. I haven't seen them in person since the Delaware game on November 11th. I watched the UConn game at Lavelle Edwards Stadium, getting ready for BYU football versus TCU, and then BYU Wisconsin I watched while I was in Cincinnati. So haven't had the chance to see BYU hoops in person in about 2 weeks, and we'll get that chance here coming up tomorrow. Tip-off at 3 p.m. Mountain Time, 5 o'clock Eastern, 4 p.m. Eastern pregame, 2 p.m. pregame on Thanksgiving Day here on KSL News Radio. And I'm expecting a good BYU crowd, too. A lot of people here in Orlando. My sister and her husband, they're in a ward here in Orlando, and they were telling me that a lot of Cougar fans are planning on being at this game, so would not be surprised in the slightest if BYU has the greatest fan turnout in this event, which is a 4-team field with BYU, Miami, Georgetown, and Dayton. I would honestly say it'll probably be, in terms of fan turnout, number 1, BYU, 2, Dayton, 3, Miami, and then 4, Georgetown. That would be my unofficial prediction of what the fan turnout will look like this week here in Florida for the ESPN Events Invitational. But BYU 4-1 on the season, going to be taking on 5-1 Miami. And Miami is a very up and down basketball team. They like to get up and down the floor. But one thing of note, that their strength of schedule this year has been very light. The one barometer game that they've had was against Florida. They lost that game 14 points, 82-68, and they didn't put up much offensively in that game. They were competitive for about a half, and then early on in that second half, the defending national champs pulled away from BYU and comfortably won that game. And what was a neutral floor, you could say, in Jacksonville, but it seemed like it was a pro Florida Gators crowd. So Miami comes in with a 5-1 record, with their lone loss being their toughest test to date this season. They've got wins over Jacksonville, Bethune-Cookman, Stetson, Elon, and Delaware State. Yeah, nothing much to write home about. I think BYU is a sizable favorite in this one. You know, I think what can make this interesting is that, well, from a personnel standpoint, Miami was without Ernest Uday and True Washington, 2 of their starters in their last time out. We'll see if they end up playing on Thursday. I would think so, but we'll see what happens there with those 2 players. And Uday, you know, former Kansas and TCU transfer. BYU faced him when he was at TCU. And then True Washington, he's a shooting guard transfer from New Mexico. So those are guys to keep an eye out. They've also got, you know, Miami is a transfer-laden team this season under Jai Lucas, the first-year head coach, who's the former Texas Longhorns basketball player, came over from John Shire's staff at Duke last season. But they've got Trey Donaldson, the former Michigan guard. It's a pretty talented team. I thought Jai Lucas put together a good roster that should be competitive in the ACC. The ACC is not your dad's ACC back in the day. You know, this is not the greatest version of the ACC, at least we think. We'll see what ends up happening later this year. But I would say, in terms of the Power 6 leagues in hoops, you know, or Power 5 leagues in hoops, I would say the ACC is probably the 5th best league behind the Big 12, the Big 10, the SEC, and the Big East. But, you know, Miami could be a team that maybe is in the conversation to be a at-large bid potentially in the NCAA tournament. So this could be a good quality opportunity for BYU. And I think, you know, an area to focus will be, of course, Richie Saunders, who follows up a 26-point outing against Wisconsin, and he was fantastic against the Badgers. Really curious to see how Richie follows up that performance here in Florida after how he performed in Wisconsin, because I just feel like he's a mismatch nightmare. Because when you look at the potential matchups here between BYU and Miami, Miami's got an Indiana transfer, Malik Renault, who I would probably forecast would say he's going to be the guy that guards A.J. DeBonsa, depending on, you know, how many guys they throw at A.J., if they just go man-to-man or double team him. But, you know, Richie Saunders, who do you put on him? Because Richie is such a mismatch, because he can get to the rim. He can knock it down from 3. He makes it all go for BYU. And, of course, AJ's ability to get to the rim, and not only get to the rim, but also draw fouls consistently, too. I think that's something to watch in this game. Miami doesn't put up many three-point attempts. They're 307th nationally in three-point attempts. But so maybe if BYU can continue to have that success on the defensive side, because against Wisconsin, BYU was brilliant defensively. I thought that was, again, what I said yesterday, the finest hour for BYU on the defensive end of the floor this season. They looked great defensively. I'm curious to see the follow-up act in this performance today, or tomorrow, against the Miami Hurricanes in this game. But I think BYU wins this game. I think that, I'm really curious, too, to see how, Keba Keita continues to get back to form. He played against Wisconsin, but Hadim Boop primarily played more minutes than Keba Keita in that game. What's the workload looking like for Keita this week? And, of course, the status of Kennard Davis kind of remains up in the air. No closure from the legal side of things, so typically when you have that hovering, you would expect that he doesn't play, but we'll see on that front in regards to Kennard Davis. But I think BYU's in a great spot in this game too. But I also want to see more from, Tyler Moroz. I thought he got a little bit of momentum under his sails in that Wisconsin game. How does he build on that? How does he stack those days, in the words of Kevin Young, when it comes to that? So I think BYU is the better team in this matchup. I think BYU wins by about 9 points or so, somewhere in that ballpark. I could see it being a 10, 11-point win potentially, but I think, if you get Miami playing their game where they're transition basketball, fast breaks, they can make this really challenging, but at the same time, I think BYU matches up well, and they're more than enough capable to play that up-and-down style of play too. BYU can beat you in a variety of ways, but I think defensively is kind of the X factor here in this game. If BYU locks up defensively, as they did against Wisconsin, I think it'll be a good day for BYU against Miami. And then if they win that one, they'll play the winner of Georgetown and Dayton coming up on Black Friday here from Orlando. Now, let's get back to the gridiron with my Big 12 football picks for the week.
Big 12 picks. In the deepest conference in America, anything can happen. Mitch tries to tell you what will happen next. It's his Big 12 picks. Big 12 picks.
It's an 8-game slate here to close out the regular season in the Big 12. I'll rapid fire these picks here for you on Friday, Black Friday. It starts out at 10 a.m. as number 13 Utah goes at Kansas. I don't see Kansas giving much of a fight to Utah as Kansas State did. Give me the Utes to win big over the Jayhawks in Lawrence. Arizona, number 25 Arizona at number 20 Arizona State, 7 p.m. on Fox. I'm going to go with Arizona State. I know Arizona is surging. They're playing excellent football, but it's in Tempe. And look, Kenny Dillingham's teams defensively, this is a great defensive battle. I can see this being a low-scoring game. But give me the Sun Devils. I feel like the fact that they're still winning ball games with the personnel that have been completely in and out for this ASU team, and they're still playing at a really high level. Give me the Sun Devils to squeak by a red-hot Arizona team in Tempe. We then move to Saturday. Number 5 Texas Tech at West Virginia, 10 a.m. on ESPN. Win and you're in Arlington, Texas Tech. And they will. They'll comfortably beat West Virginia big. I expect a 3-touchdown win. Now, West Virginia has been better in recent weeks, but still, I'm going to go with the Red Raiders. Both teams coming off byes this week. Give me Tech to win comfortably and punch their ticket to Arlington. Houston at Baylor, 10 a.m. on TNT. Dave Aranda, he's returning as head coach of the Baylor Bears in 2026. A little bit of surprise, I thought, because that could have been an easy opportunity with AD Mac Rhodes gone. Clean break, have a new head coach, new AD, just have everything clean, because it feels like, you're going to get to September and then fire him then, and then you're going to have another lost season. Baylor fighting for their postseason lives in this game against the Cougs. Give me Houston to get win number 9 in year 2 under Willie Fritz. Cougs get it done in Waco. Colorado at Kansas State, 10 a.m. on FS1. Like many of these teams that we've been talking about, Kansas State looking to punch a ticket to the postseason. They're 5-6 on the season. Such a disappointing year for both teams. Colorado's 3-8. Kansas State's 5-6. 10 a.m. on FS1. Give me K-State. If their ground attack shows up like it did against Utah, they will win with ease over Colorado. Iowa State at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State hired a new head coach. North Texas head coach Eric Morris, now the new head man at Oklahoma State beginning next season. Number one offense in S&P Plus this season in Denton. Comes from the Mike Leach coaching tree. I think that's a pretty underrated hire. It's not a splashy hire, but look, you don't need splashy in Stillwater. You just need efficient, effective, and an identity. Exciting times, I think, in the future for Oklahoma State going forward with Eric Morris going to Stillwater. I really like that hire on the surface for the Pokes. But for this game this week, give me Iowa State to win in Stillwater. It'll be the second consecutive season Oklahoma State goes winless in Big 12 play if they don't get this win. That's at 10 a.m. on ESPNU. And then finally, Cincinnati at TCU, 1:30 p.m. on Fox. Give me TCU to get the victory here. I think Cincinnati is tail spinning. They are on a 3-game skid. Make it 4 games to close out the regular season. Horned Frogs, after a big win last week at Houston, they get a second straight win and improve to 8-4 to close out the regular season for the Horned Frogs. So that's my picks this week in the Big 12 Conference. Regular season is a wrap after this weekend. I'll give my prediction for BYU and UCF on Friday, Black Friday, so be on the lookout for that. Taking our final time out, we'll get to my conversation with BYU running back LJ Martin next here on Cougar Tracks. Welcome back into Cougar Tracks here on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports YouTube page. BYU running back LJ Martin. He's the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Week. He is the man that makes BYU's offense go. And I had the chance to catch up with LJ yesterday after practice. Here's my conversation with the Cougar star running back fresh off his career-high rushing performance at Cincinnati last week. Welcome back into Cougar Tracks here on KSL News Radio and KSLSports.com in a week where people are thankful. I know Cougar Nation is thankful for this guy, BYU running back and Big 12 Offensive Player of the Week, LJ Martin. LJ, how you feeling after that great performance, that career-high performance after Cincinnati?
Well, I'm feeling pretty good, just a little bit sore from all the carries, but I'm feeling good overall.
How fun was that to just get that huge workload, 32 carries against a really good team in Cincinnati on the road, and to, lean on your offensive line to help you get to that number, but just to win a game on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fun, just being able to touch the ball that many times. I mean, that's, I would say, anywhere in the base dream. So it was a lot of fun.
When you have games like that, do you kind of reflect back on all the work you put in, in winter conditioning and spring ball to get to those moments? Like, is all those little workouts where no one's watching, it's for moments like that, you think?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. It's cool to go out there and put up a performance like that, but it just goes back to the hard work I put in. So just going into this week, I mean, nothing changes. I'm still going to put in the same amount of work because, we got to go out there and repeat it again.
What's the areas of focus this week against UCF's defense?
Just being physical again. Just going out there, they can be a really good defense. They're fast, physical, but we just got to be tough too and just go out there and play football at the end of the day.
How much of the messaging from Kalani and Coach Roderick is letting the team know about, this UCF team is in a similar spot that BYU was in 2 years ago, where they're trying to get one more win to get to the postseason. The opponent, BYU in this case, but Oklahoma State 2 years ago, they were just win and they go to the Big 12 title. And that was a dogfight. That was an overtime game. Just how much is maybe that messaging of like, hey, don't take these guys lightly?
Yeah, they mentioned that a lot. We know that they're in a very similar position. I mean, pretty much the same position, and they're gonna be hungry. They're gonna come out, give us their all, and with that, we got to go out there and give them our all. We can't look past them. We can't just go out there and think they're gonna give it to us. They're gonna try to do whatever they can to stop us to get that win, and we got to be able to do the same.
It was pretty cool at Nippert Stadium on Saturday. I saw you like embracing the fans, like many of the players on your guys' team. But then after, I saw you talking with Isaiah Jada, and I think sometimes these big rushing performances, fans forget to give praise to the offensive line. How appreciative are you, or maybe thankful, since that's the buzzword this week, how thankful are you to have an offensive line like guys like Isaiah Jada and Bruce Mitchell opening up holes for you to get those big games?
Yeah, I'm very grateful. I mean, without them, the play doesn't get started, like, and that's for every play. So, like just for them to be out there, they're the most unselfish group on the field. They won't do anything that'll make them record a stat, but I mean, they're the key of every play. So, for them to be out there and just doing that for me, and they're just really unselfish and just get things going. So, I just love being around them.
And how rewarding has it been to continue to that relationship, have that blossom with Bear Bachmeyer, the quarterback, who's the second leading rusher behind you on this team? What can you say about Bear and what he means to this team?
Yeah, I mean, he means a lot. Tough kid. You saw that in the game on Saturday, and he's doing whatever it takes to win. So we just have a lot of respect for him, and we're really proud of how he's played so far.
How optimistic or confident are you that you and this group are tuning out the playoff noise and what maybe lies ahead and just trying to go 1-0 this week against a UCF team that's been competitive in many games this year?
Yeah, just knowing that nothing's given to us yet. We haven't earned anything. We gotta win every game from here on out, and to be able to play another one. So it starts this week, and it's going to keep on going. And but it starts this week, so we got to give this game our all, and then we'll see how the rest goes.
Galani was very complimentary of you earlier this week about how people on the outside are talking about you, maybe being an NFL guy, but you're not really focusing too much on that. I mean, is that something that's creeping in to your mind at all? Do you talk with the coaches about where your future stands after this season? How do you approach it? Are you just not letting that really kind of capture any of your attention right now?
No, I'm just trying to stay in the moment. It's been fun playing with these guys, so I'm just trying to enjoy the moment. Every opportunity I get, I'm just trying to enjoy it, and just spend the best of my time here, and just we'll see at the end of the season how things go and where I'll be. But for now, I'm focused right now on playing football against UCF.
And how much do you enjoy, though, playing at home? It feels like this season it's been weird how you guys primarily have lived on the road, it seems like, at least because those two games were so early in the year at home. And then, I mean, you guys pretty much put in work on the road. How much do you enjoy these home spots, even though this one's a morning game, being in front of the home crowd again to close out the regular season?
I mean, it's awesome. It's always great whenever you get to play at home in front of the fans, your peers. So it's just really cool to be able to have your support staff out there, so your supporters out there, and just being at home. Yeah, nothing like you.
Last couple of things for you, LJ, and appreciate the time. Where do you feel like have been the biggest areas of focus in your growth as a player over the course of this season? Even it feels like just you've continued to improve throughout this year. What do you attribute to that as areas of focus that have been catalysts for this improvement?
I would just say it's everything. Just taking a step back last year at the end of the last season and just watching and just seeing what I can improve on. And there's a lot of stuff I could improve on, but I would say it's really just pass pro and playing without the ball. I feel like I could improve on that a lot. So I feel like I really try to work on that, and I've seen it work out pretty good this year.
And do you think it also ties into just your knowledge of the offense? Kalani's noted that, I mean, this offense inside and out. Do you agree with that sentiment and just your comfort of what this offense expects of you from Aaron Roderick?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I know it pretty well right now, and it's just easy to just go out there and do what I need to, and it just allows me to play free and just go have fun.
Well, LJ, best of luck this weekend, and hopefully we have more conversations, many more down the road here this season. But regular season finale, congrats on all the success to this point, and good luck this weekend.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
And that's BYU running back LJ Martin here on Cougar Tracks. And I'll do it that's today's edition of Cougar Tracks on this Wednesday, Thanksgiving Eve. Hopefully everyone has a happy Thanksgiving. I will be back on Thursday night with a post-game reaction of BYU Miami, and then regularly scheduled show on Friday for Black Friday between BYU and UCF preview and a preview of Friday's BYU basketball game. Talk to you then here on Cougar Tracks, and it's powered by KSLSports.com.